If you could travel back in time to talk to the famous Greek poet Homer, author of the Odyssey and the Iliad, and showed him a clear midday sky, he would likely be confused if you called it blue. By meticulously analyzing classical ancient Greek texts, philologist William Gladstone noticed something bizarre. The word blue simply does not exist in these epic poems. When Homer needs to describe the color of the vast and deep Mediterranean Sea, he doesn't use the term we would expect. Instead, he repeatedly uses an expression that defies our modern logic, calling the ocean a wine-dark sea. For Homer, the sea had the hue of a deep red wine rather than the vibrant blue we see today. This total absence of a specific word for blue in the most foundational texts of Western literature was the first clue that humanity's color perception has undergone a radical transformation over the millennia. The ancient Greeks divided the visual world much more by light intensity, between what was light and what was dark, than by the complex chromatic spectrum we validate today. The mystery discovered in ancient Greece was not an isolated case or a quirk of the Greek language. Intrigued by Gladstone's discovery, linguist Lazarus Geiger decided to expand the research to other ancient civilizations around the planet. He analyzed the millennia-old Indian religious hymns, the Vedas, meticulously examined ancient Icelandic sagas, studied classical Chinese texts and the original Hebrew sacred scriptures. The result of this historical sweep was overwhelming. The color blue is not mentioned a single time. There was no word for the blue of the sky or the blue of flowers in these primitive records. Geiger discovered that all human languages follow a universal and identical order for the emergence of color words as they evolve. First, terms for black and white appear, meaning dark and light. The next color to get a name without exception is red, the color of blood and fire. Next come yellow and green. Blue is invariably the last color to be named in every culture in human history, appearing only when a society develops advanced pigmentation technologies. In the vast ocean of ancient civilizations that ignored the existence of blue, the Egyptians were the sole and remarkable exception. While the rest of the world saw the sky and the sea as variations of green, gray, or purple, ancient Egypt was fascinated by blue. But there is a strictly economic and technological explanation for this. The Egyptians were the first society to successfully produce a synthetic blue pigment on a large scale, historically known as Egyptian blue. They developed a complex technique by fusing silica, lime, copper, and an alkali at extremely high temperatures. Because blue began to be artificially manufactured to adorn the tombs of pharaohs, royal jewelry, and statues of gods, Egyptian society needed to create a specific word to name that precious new product. This fact reinforces the thesis of modern neurobiology. The human mind only begins to visually categorize and identify a color accurately after that color gains a practical use, a cultural name, and an active presence in the tribe's artificial daily life. To prove that the lack of a word directly alters what the eyes can process, scientists conducted a fascinating experiment with the Himba tribe, an isolated people from Namibia whose native language lacks a word to differentiate green from blue. Researchers placed tribe members in front of a computer screen displaying a circle with 11 identical green squares and just one distinctly blue square. To any modern Westerner, the blue square stands out immediately, like a beacon. However, the Himba individuals failed miserably to point out which square was different. They took a long time or chose the wrong squares because to their brains, all those blocks belonged to the same chromatic category. On the other hand, when the test was done with various shades of green, including a subtle variation that a Western eye would never notice, the Himba identified the difference in a fraction of a second, as their language has dozens of specific words for the shades of green found in nature. The explanation for this phenomenon does not lie in a physical defect in our ancestors' eyes, but rather in the way the brain interprets biological data. Physically, the eye structure of humans 10,000 years ago was exactly the same as ours. The human retina possesses specialized light-detecting cells called cones. We have three types of cones, those responsible for capturing long, red, medium, green, and short, blue wavelengths. Therefore, photons of blue light entered Homer's eyes and stimulated his cones perfectly. The crucial point is that the eye only captures raw data, but it is the visual cortex in the brain that actually sees and creates the final image. If the brain lacks a cultural concept, a mental box, or a name for blue, it processes that visual information by discarding it as background noise or mixing it with the closest colors it already knows, like green or dark gray. If you take a rigorous look at the natural environment outside of our modern world filled with plastics, digital screens, and dyed clothing, you will realize that blue is an extremely rare color in nature. There are no mammals with blue fur, blue reptiles are scarce anomalies, and flowers of this color represent a tiny percentage of global flora. Even the animals we think of as blue, like the morpho butterfly or the feathers of a hyacinth macaw, do not possess actual blue pigment. Their color is the result of a physical optical illusion called structural coloration, where light hits microstructures and reflects in a way that appears blue. Because our hunter-gatherer ancestors lived in a world dominated by the brown of the earth, the green of the forests, and the red of animal blood, blue simply had no biological relevance for daily survival. The human brain, focused on conserving energy, did not waste processing power creating a visual category for something that almost never appeared on the forest floor or the savanna. An inevitable question arises when we debate ancestral blue blindness. What about the sky? The sky is right above us every day, occupying half of our visual field. How could the ancients ignore the blue of the sky? The scientific answer is surprising. To the primitive brain, the sky has no fixed color. It is just empty space. Studies with young children in controlled environments show that before being taught by adults that the sky is blue, they usually describe it as white or colorless. For ancient peoples, the sky constantly changed states. It was bright and white during the day, reddish-orange at twilight, and pitch black at night. Without the existence of physical blue objects on Earth to serve as a structural comparison, the human mind interpreted the celestial vault not as a bluish canopy, but rather as a source of pure luminosity or a whitest reflection of the atmosphere, merging it with the perception of the air itself. The theory of linguistic relativity, also known as the Sapir-Whorf Hypothesis, argues that the language you speak determines and limits how you perceive the reality around you. In the case of colors, this works like a real-time video editing filter inside your brain. When a culture finally creates the word blue, a new neurological wiring occurs. The brain begins to train the visual cortex to notice the subtleties of that specific wavelength. Before the word existed, the mind grouped blue into the category of dark shades or green variants. This is why in many ancient languages, the same word was used to describe both a tree leaf and the depths of the sea. Language functions as a tool for cognitive sharpness. Without the word to anchor the perception, the color floats fuzzily in the mind, invisible to the consciousness of the individual who looks at blue but sees only a nameless shadow. As the centuries progressed and the Middle Ages took hold, the color blue went from complete cultural invisibility to becoming the ultimate symbol of status, wealth, and divinity in the world. The reason for this turnaround was the discovery of lapis lazuli, a semi-precious stone found almost exclusively in the remote mines of Afghanistan. To transform this stone into the pigment known as ultramarine blue, a grueling grinding process and complex chemical purification were required. A kilogram of this blue powder came to be worth more than pure gold itself. Due to the astronomical cost, blue was reserved by religious decree to paint only the robes of the Virgin Mary in European cathedrals and the cloaks of absolute kings. It was at this historical moment that Western Europe had its collective brain completely flooded by blue. The color now not only had a name, but it signified the pinnacle of earthly and spiritual power, forcing the human mind to focus intensely on this shade. Today, we live at the absolute opposite pole of our Stone Age ancestors. Modern humans are immersed in an unceasing bombardment of artificial blue light. Our smartphones, computer monitors, LED televisions, and neon signs continuously emit short waves of blue light, stimulating our ocular cones and keeping our brains in a constant state of alertness, directly affecting melatonin production and disrupting our sleep cycles. We have hyper-developed our ability to identify and categorize hundreds of variations of blue, from turquoise to navy blue, because our technological environment demands this differentiation from us. The incredible journey of the color blue, rising from complete anonymity in Homer's poems to becoming the most dominant and stimulating color of our modern digital life, proves that our vision is not just a static biological process, but a living cultural tool that continues to evolve and shape itself according to the technologies we create.